Act 181.
We are live.
We're live. This is Senate Appropriations, February 25th. We're going through FY 2027, budget requests, and we have the department, agency, what do you call yourself?
We're still a department.
Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs with us today. I'll let you introduce yourselves for the record and give us your presentation.
Thank you. Tim Leaders-Dumont. I am the Executive Director of the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs.
Annie Newman from the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs.
And also with us is Barb Bernardini, longtime fiscal officer from the department, and Lauren Clemens, our Director of Operations and Labor Relations. And we will give you a bit of the presentation you received online is really in part, JFO staff sent out a memo on your behalf about the types of things you were looking for this year, trends and performance. And even though some of that is a little bit square peg round hole for the criminal justice system about what success looks like, there was lots of information and lots of data. Our department is engaged in essentially a 900-day data analysis project using judicial filing data. And so a lot of that is in this massive presentation that's available on your website. I'm going to be your speed tour guide using about 30 slides, which will appear on screen for you. And starting with that is just a bit of an executive summary. I know your committee is very
as far as the documents online, is it the budget presentation?
Exactly. Yep. It's a consolidated budget presentation. And before we get to that, on your screen, we have our executive summary, which we will jump right through. And just as a bit of a reminder on the department's structure, back in the 80s, the department was created, and it is comprised of a central office and then the 14 state's attorneys and 14 sheriffs. The state's attorneys and the sheriffs both have executive committees made up of 5 members each, which elect the executive director, my position, and essentially provide oversight over our central office through a bit of a corporate board structure and statute. A lot of the work that we do is county government passed through a state department, essentially. Right, we provide IT support, the appellate litigation for the state's attorneys, human resources, labor relations, managing the state's budget across 4 different budgets, of which you're aware, and we'll go through those. The department also handles labor relations. The department does not utilize the Department of Human Resources with respect to labor relations with our unionized employees. And because of a Supreme Court decision a number of years ago, and the 2 units within our department, the bargaining units, are state transport deputies and the state's attorney's office is the SAO. Our 4 budgets are the state's attorney's budget, which is our largest of the 4 budgets. The SIU budget, the Special Investigation Unit's budget, we coordinate a grant program to investigate certain types of crimes. And there are 12 SIUs out in the field. We coordinate dollars for those. It's a very simple budget. The victim advocates budget, the victim advocates used to be paid for through another entity. They're now paid for through our department. And even though they're in each state's attorney's office, they have their separate budget. But it is really under the state's attorney's umbrella.
When did that change?
2022.
Why?
We were originally funded through a VOCA grant with Crime Victim Services. And Crime Victim Services said, most of the states across the nation were moving away from funding state victim advocates with federal money. So CCDS came in and asked for the switch for us to go into state general fund for our 28 victim advocates. So when that occurred, the money, which of course is all state general fund money, came to us. Because they're essentially our employees, and we had a grant agreement through CCDS, but that terminated. We still have one grant through CCDS, and we'll talk a little bit about that, which is basically what they call the STOP grant, and it's primarily for, we support 3 investigators to do domestic violence, sexual assault investigation for 3 of the offices. We only get enough money to fund 3. But it's been a very successful program. So we still have a connection.
But each office still has a victim advocate.
Every office has a victim advocate. Some have more than one, but every office has at least one.
Do they work for the district attorneys?
For the state's attorneys at each office.
Yeah,
that's correct.
But they're just funded through a separate line.
The department has the 4 budget lines, but really, as you'll see with the victim advocates budget, it's salary and benefits. That's what it is. The operational support essentially comes through the state's attorney's budget. And then the fourth budget in our department is the sheriff's budget, which is primarily the salary and benefits of the sheriffs, and then the transport deputies, the state employees that are allocated to the field under the supervision. And Senator Norris could give you the description and history of that program better than people at the end of the table, but we'll leave that for a different day. But those are state employees stationed at the county level that work for our department, but are law enforcement supervised by a local sheriff of my choosing. In terms of some of the pressures, getting to the JFO memo, looking over a 3-year time period, we have moved 15%, a 50% reduction in the number of cases pending from 2023 until 2025. This is the last December 2025. We have 22,000 pending cases right now, being staffed by our offices. In 2023, we had 26,000. So that's substantial progress in terms of moving cases. I will say that includes almost all of the Chittenden County docket program, where we saw a reduction of nearly 800 cases. So if you think about 22,000 cases, 800 is a not insignificant number within that piece, and it shows you the progress of a surge of focus and AHS resources and designated agency resources at the local level, and what that did. So I would say we've now slowed some of our statewide progress. There's a potential for a bit of a plateau of around 20,000 cases, in my opinion, because we're kind of now we're just maintaining. We're about 107% clearance rate is our average clearance rate. We're clearing 7% more cases than we're filing, or 107% on average over the last year, which is excellent. But to really make progress, you need to be at what Chittenden was at for the last quarter, 170%. So they had 170% clearance rate, and they saw a dramatic reduction in nonviolent case types. The other major engine of progress over the last 3 years, over the last 900 plus days, we've used 540 trial dates. That is a lot. It's the majority, more than 50% of the days we are in trial. Without trial dates being set, cases do not resolve. Between 2024 saw a 54% increase in trial day utilization. That is a huge uptick. 2025 volume still remains 24% over the 2023 level, but we're seeing a little bit of that leveling off. In 2025, we used 178 trial dates. In 2024, we used 220. So less than the prior year, but there was so much to do still coming out of the COVID pandemic for serious cases. Most of those trials are felonies. Most of those trials are violent felonies, or felonies where there is a sexual element. That means that we're not having a lot of misdemeanor trials. So we're still resolving 99% of our cases through plea agreements, or things like what we've seen in Chittenden, where it's treatment court, it's a probation, it's some version of an alternate path. But those trial dates are so important, and the counties that see the most trials are not surprising to the people in this room. Windham County, Bennington County, Chittenden County, Rutland County, Washington County, and Franklin County. It's the major locations of criminal hub activity. The smaller counties are also having trials, and last year, every single county saw at least one trial, including Randolph County. And they don't have a trial every year, but there are other counties where they have a trial every single month. And there's typically one, maybe two trial dates set each month. So these are not happening every day. And it's because you're not moving other cases, you're not doing arraignments when you're having trials, because we're using the same court spaces. Another huge component of our pressures, and looking at our pressures, is the high volume defendants. Over here, we'll call them nonviolent, and our violent crime. Those are competing for the same court spaces. And so right now, we have about 6,000 pending felonies, 13,000 pending misdemeanors. Of the felonies, there's 111 pending homicides. 103 of those are being staffed by our department. And that is the 111 number, that's 24% higher than 2023. So even though we're making progress overall, our violent cases are continuing to rise in terms of filings. In 2023, there was 90 pending homicides, and today there's 111. Right, you look at some larger states, those types of numbers might account for a large city, like Baltimore, certain sections of New York City over a 2 or 3 year period. These are statistically higher based on per capita then locations like Vermont has a higher per capita homicide rate than New York City over the last 2 years. And part of that, as we know, and as especially a couple of the members in this room know, even as we've made progress with our lower level cases, we're still a fairly hospitable location for the sale of drugs. And we still have a population of people that are struggling. And with that, there's a ripple of activity that no longer is the homicide docket domestic violence alone. That has remained very consistent, and it's still a really serious part of our homicide docket. The homicides that are on the increase in a review of the affidavits of the last year are drug direct, drug adjacent, or drug nexus with firearm present. So it's usually a drug debt of $500 in the state of Vermont can get you killed. And that is an important thing to note. I've personally prosecuted cases where that's the fact pattern, and it's not uncommon, particularly in our pathways of 91 and Route 7. 89 connects the two, but Route 7 and 91 is two sort of major corridors of drug activity. Route 7 has more pending homicides right now than the 91 corridor, but Windham County has a lot, and the Northeast Kingdom has a lot. Windsor County has a slight bump, and Rutland County has 16 pending homicides. Chittenden County has 24 pending homicides, which is a lot better than a year ago, by the way. State's Attorney George, using the accountability docket as a little bit of a pressure release, was able to focus on homicides the last quarter and resolved all of the 2022 firearm-related deaths in Chittenden County. That was our huge uptick. 2022 was the highest homicide spike that we've seen across the state. And as all the people in this room know, people who live in Chittenden County are not the only people that commit crimes in Chittenden County. It's the same with Washington County and same with some of the other hubs. So that was a good thing, right? But also we were seeing this overall trend. At one point in the last 12 months, there was 130 pending homicides. The fact that we're at 111 during that 2025 snapshot is not indicative of the high water mark. It's a snapshot, so a snapshot tells a story, but it doesn't tell the whole story. The high volume defendants, the folks with 3 and 5 or more, the folks with 3 or more dockets still make up 45% of all the pending cases. Docket and case are the same thing. I use them interchangeably. This is the same term. 45% of all pending cases relate to persons with 3 or more, and 26% relate to persons with 5 or more. Think about that number for a second. Only 6% of people with a pending criminal case have those 26 cases. So we're dealing with 6% of our defendant population is driving 1/4 of our trial and court activity. So as we've done in Chittenden, as we hope to do in Rutland, focusing on that group, reduce repeated activity, reduce recidivism is an important piece. At the bottom of page 2, you'll see the caseload averages. I rounded up to the closest here. Our victim advocates have roughly 600 cases per. Our administrative professionals have about 800 cases per, and our attorneys have 298, but I rounded up to 300 cases per. 2 years ago, we were at 365 for the attorneys. So we have driven that down, but why do we have victim advocates with twice as many cases in that? It's because we have about half as many victim advocates as we have attorneys, victim administrative professionals, the same story there. I know those numbers are sometimes helpful. There is a map included in your presentation at the suggestion of Emily Byrne to create a map. So we've created a map by county with caseload and homicide by county that you will see later in the presentation. I also have a large printout of that, which I'm happy to bring in at some point on poster board. A couple of specialized programs for the department I just wanted to run through quickly. Our department employs 2 deputy state's attorneys that just focus on traffic safety activity. They carry a caseload, and they're mostly dealing with DUI, distracted driving, reckless driving cases that are either highly complex and technical or have serious bodily injury or death involved. And keeping in mind, 18% of all pending cases have the term DUI in the charge somewhere. So it's a huge percentage of the criminal activity in the state is driving cases. That doesn't include negligent operation and other things. That was just a DUI search, but it's important. There is a point of success.
Yeah, I just want to mention that those 2 positions are funded by the National Highway Safety Administration through this Agency of Transportation here in Vermont. What used to be called the Governor's Highway Safety Program is now called the State Highway Safety Office. Vermont is unique in that we have had such success that a number of years ago, we were able to request and be granted a second prosecutor in that role. As you know, Vermont is often hindered by the small state minimum that the feds push on us. You're like, you can't have any more money, you're a small state. We were very fortunate in that the state agency of transportation and the highway office said, we think it's worth giving Vermont a second position. Both positions are federally funded 80%, and they have a lot of success in terms of prosecution work out for our 14 field offices. So while they work under Tim, they're dispatched to the 14 offices to handle some of the most egregious cases with regard to driving, impaired driving, reckless driving, all of that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention is, and I say the word success only because the data is better than it was 5 years ago, but it's still talking about fatalities. In 2022, there were 76 deaths on the road, 73 fatal crashes. Since that peak, which was a peak, fatalities have decreased by 20% as of the end of 2025. We would like to think that our dedicated education and prosecutorial resources are a part of that. We still had 61 people die on the roads last year, which is horrific. Only one of those 61 is accounted for in our homicide data because we're prosecuting those as DUI, serious bodily injury, or reckless driving, serious bodily injury, or death. The one that is being prosecuted as a homicide is the case in Rutland, which folks may be aware of, where a police officer was killed. And the TSRP program is supporting some of the work going on in that case in Rutland, which was in the news. Looking at that 5-year trend here, that's AOT's data. So you can just see we had a spike in 2022, and 2024 last year we had 59, 2025, this past year 61. So a slight increase over 2024, but still trending in the right direction, I think. One of the other specialized pieces we do at our central office is we have one deputy state's attorney that handles almost all of the appeals at the Supreme Court for the 14 state's attorney's offices. Chittenden County does have some folks that do appeals on a regular basis, and today we have the state's attorney from Wyndham doing one of his own appeals. But Evan Meenan, who used to be in this building quite a bit, over the last 3 years, he has been involved, now it's over this number, but 100 appeals as of December 2025 through October 2022, about 25 filings a year. Those are cases that involve sometimes years of litigation. They are all related to convictions. Sometimes thousands of pages of litigation occur. They're incredibly time sensitive, and all of them involve people that have already gone through the lower courts. And so we use one attorney to do that, to try to speak with one voice as best we can, because as we know, you all pass the laws. The other way we shape our laws is through case law at the Supreme Court. And so we're very proud of Deputy State's Attorney Meenan and his work. This past year, he had worked on 24 cases during the calendar year 2025. 2023, there was a sort of a high year for 30 Supreme Court cases, and all of those are staffed with no administrative support specific to that program. So he does all his own work. He's incredibly efficient. We're very proud of him and the work he does. One of the last areas of specialized work we do at our office, which is related to the whole system, is our state transport program. As you know, the transport deputies are state employees, and over in FY25, the last full year of reporting, we did 4,035 transports. Those numbers for this next fiscal year, FY26, we're still in FY26, so we will have that number for you when the year has completed. It's going to be this very similar or more because of the activity that we're seeing in our courts, and a 2019, 2018 level of detainees. So a lot of detainees, a lot of serious cases. We will have a lot of transports to get those people who are all presumed innocent to court. Looking at some of the high water locations, Chittenden County, Rutland County, the same places where we have in trials is where we have the most transports. If you look at the fourth page, I also included some numbers. Oh yeah.
Yeah, in looking at the Chittenden County, the highest volume, Chittenden County is very busy to begin with. We all know this,
Correct.
But does that include the Franklin County Northwest Correctional Facility transports also, or who does those?
So Chittenden County's transport team covers Addison through Franklin. These numbers are actually delivered to the Chittenden County Court. So Franklin, I believe, was maybe fifth on here, Senator, but I can get you the total number for Franklin as well.
Thank you.
But there are, and it should be noted, in the Chittenden docket that we see, There are lots of folks with cases that pend that live in Addison, Franklin, Lemoyle, or Washington. And so when we wrap those cases up in Chittenden, sometimes it's a central location for that. I do have some crime trend numbers here. Those are from the FBI. They have not fully analyzed the year 2025, so these lag by a year. Our judicial filing data is very current. The NIMBR's reported data is different. So if a homicide happens in 2024, the investigation, search warrants might take 2 years to file. And so judicial filing data is not indicative of reported incidents. In NIMBR's, and you just correctly point this out, the National Incident-Based Reporting System that the FBI uses to talk about when crime is reported to police.
And are these percentages kind of a trend line over those 6 years, or is it just?
So there is raw numbers included later in your presentation, I think somewhere around page 19 of the larger presentation. Shoplifting and retail theft, so that's up 110%. Theft from motor vehicles is up 84%. Aggravated assault, which can sometimes be charged as attempted murder, is up 46%, and murder and manslaughter is up 73%. So those numbers, I'm sure, don't shock many of you, but they also co-occurring with the pandemic. There has been an increase.
Also, I'm wondering, is it just like 2018 to 2021 was pretty flat, and then the 110% has been the last 3 years? Or
so you can actually see in the larger presentation, and I'll find the actual piece. It's the actual number of reports each year, and I can send that as a
It's
standard.
like a big table.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So the last thing I'll get to is our asks for the FY27 budget.
Sorry, no more time.
And with that, and this year, Mr. Chair, we prioritize them in the order that the department believes is most urgent. And I have numbers, actually. If you look at your, there's a document that if you just actually, Lauren, if you can scroll to the next, just keep scrolling down. Let's go to this, just below the carry forward document. So right there, the numbers for each of the asks by category. So the first ask is to eliminate vacancy savings targets for FY27 in the three of our 4 budgets. In the 4th budget, the SIU budget, there is not a vacancy savings target. So for the state's attorneys, and these are to avoid layoffs, $330,000 for the victim advocates, $147,000, and for the sheriffs, $139,000. Again, these are, our department, in our collective opinion, does not have vacancies for long when we have them, if we have the money to pay for positions, if that makes sense. So for the state's attorneys, that would mean, let's say Washington County lost a deputy state's attorney, goes to the private sector. To meet that type of target, we would have to hold it open for the year, even if we could hire for it. And in our opinion, we need to maintain our current workforce to do the work that we're doing and not have any slippage on data or progress. Annie, do you want to provide any context on the vacancy savings pieces?
Well, we were really grateful last year. You all eliminated our vacancy saving that we had to build into our budget for both the state's attorney's budget and the sheriff's. There's a small amount left over in the sheriff's budget, but we absorbed it very quickly. We didn't get to the point of solving the vacancy savings for the victim advocates last year, and we still haven't quite made that number yet. So we are still running in a deficit on that program. Part of that, the good news is we didn't have turnover in our victim advocate program. The 28 people that work in the program have been very stable and long tenured, so we didn't have the vacancy. So if we get hit with a vacancy saving number that we can't absorb, so what we have to do is at the end of the year, finance and management looks at the budget and says, is there any way we can fill the hole if something isn't spent elsewhere? So vacancy savings, when we have to build it into our budget, which is what we have to do to meet the governor's recommend, we got to find money somewhere. We have such a small operating budget in all of our programs. There's really no place to come up with like $270,000, which is what the vacancy saving number was for the victim advocate last year. So we didn't have any place to go. So we basically had to hold a position open in Wyndham County, which was somebody had left to go back to graduate school. We held the position open. We don't really, and we still haven't made up what we need. So really what it does when we have vacancy savings starting out on July 1st, just puts the budget in the hole right from the get-go. We really try to manage to the money that you give us. That's just a really difficult thing to do.
Would you have 0 vacancy savings, or just, I mean, I guess you said you did have 0 in the victim advocates, but is there, through all the employees, would you have some vacancy savings?
We might have some vacancy savings. And what would happen, it would be that at the end of in the last quarter, the finance management would meet with us and say, who's gonna end this year, in a deficit, and they would allow us to move money around from one budget to the other. So it's difficult to say. One of the things I wanted to mention, if I could, if we can go back just up to the.
Scroll up a little bit there.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things I want to mention with this is there is a chart in here that basically showed us what we had left over in each year. Barbara and I were talking, and she reminded me the other day, part of the reason we had that kind of what looks like large amounts of money, just look at the state's attorney 664. What had happened, and you probably will remember this, is that we were coming down the end of the year, the state of Vermont, in spending the ARPA money. And what happened is that finance and management went into state agencies and departments, and they took state general fund money out, and they subbed in the federal ARPA money, which made sense because they were going to lose it, right? It made sense. But what it looked like is that, wow, how can we have that extra money? Well, we didn't have that extra money going in. It was just the money that was switched around. So this year, as we look, we run our bud status pretty much every 2 weeks to see where we're at. We worry. Last year, we came into the June 30th with the sheriffs with $1,200 in their budget. Two or 3 years ago, the state's attorneys didn't make payroll the last 3 pay periods. So we had to take money. Who had money? Well, they shifted money around from the sheriffs and from SIU. Last year, we had a litigation expense with risk management. We owed risk management $441,000. We were able to find that money in the SIU budget only because they didn't spend all their law enforcement money, and some of the programs had a lot of staff turnover. So if they lose a position, we de-obligate that money. We're not paying for a position that wasn't there. So we were able to kind of come out of last year in good shape. I'm worried this year about the sheriffs. I'm terribly worried about the sheriff's budget, and I worry this year also a little bit about the state's attorneys, where we're really struggling. Tim will mention this, is we're really struggling in terms of our operating expenses, and Tim will talk to you a little bit about the mental health crisis. When I say crisis, I mean for the expenses crisis in terms of competency hearings, insanity hearings, all of that we're really struggling up against. We have a case out of Windham County where we're almost afraid to see what the bill is going to be, because it's been time and time again. They keep shifting. They keep bringing witnesses, experts in. We have to then get somebody to counteract that. It's really a tough budget that's all to say. It's really a tough budget when we start in the hole. So they can see savings for us as a priority to eliminate that, so we can at least start out fresh without owing any money, having to meet a vacancy saving of $270,000 with the victim out. It's like last year, we didn't do it.
So our number one priority would be the elimination of those savings so that we can retain staff, because those savings are targets that we have to meet post facto when someone leaves a position. The second priority we have would be, we're appreciative of the governor's recommend, but we would ask for, in our estimate, $100,000 over and above to mostly, and this is where the priorities really come in, go to our expert witness fund. In every state, every county but 2, there is a pending homicide with a mental health element, which is either competency or insanity will be raised at trial. And Defender General Valerio, a couple of years ago, said that he spent $1 million on the Garong case in Chittenden County in testimony. Our expert witness fund is $140,000 for the year. That means, you can do the math, this is 140 divided by 14. In one of our cases in Bennington County 2 weeks ago, I approved an expense of $31,000, and that is all pre-trial preparation, working with experts in depositions. And so it is a real area of concern. And I will say it is the one thing I've told all of our state's attorneys, if I need to come in here every year on BAA because we overspent in that, I will do it, but it's not the best way to build a budget. And I want to thank Senator Lyons, who has a bill right now, which includes a provision to better our contracting behavior as a state. Right now, DMH has a contract for mental health competency evals and the like, which only incorporates the initial evaluation. So then when they come to us for the subsequent trial-related evaluations, we're getting charged $600 and $400 an hour. So we're paying in some instances double and more than double for the same experts that the state already has under contract. That is bad government, and we appreciate Commissioner Manoli has testified last week on a fix, an umbrella contract that we could all benefit from at one set price. So we hope to drive down some of that cost. And I want to thank Senator Lyons for her work on the mental health and forensic work, because I think it's a huge pressure. And we're talking about, of the 111 homicides, 10 to 15 of those cases are driving most of our costs. And it is mental health. And in Washington County, less than a couple miles from here, there was an alleged homicide within a home that we'll have to spend money on. It's every community is dealing with a case like that. And they're very, very expensive, and we need to ensure we're doing justice for those cases. And it's competency, it's hospitalization, and it's having those experts at trial with us for whatever we need. Another huge area of concern for our operating budget, and it's included in a memo that we sent you after our BAA testimony concerning the transport program, is our overtime costs for the transport program. We are trying to work with the courts to have block scheduling for detainees, which will cut back on overtime into the afternoon and early hours. Right now, only one county, only one judge has adopted a block scheduling system. So we're limiting overtime with our courts in one county. The other counties, the judges are often setting 8 a.m. hearing or 4 o'clock hearing. And if you have to go to Newport or Southern State and you are in Chittenden or Franklin County, or in Bennington County, is one of the biggest commutes from Bennington County to Newport. It can take a 16-hour day. And we are working with our staff internally to try to curtail behavior. As Senator Norris knows, this is a real area of focus for my first year as the executive director, working with our team. Put out a series of policies which have created a lot of angst in the judiciary and amongst some of our staff about curtailing overtime. Because we do not have a very robust overtime budget. We're at roughly 80% spent for the year right now for our overtime, and we have that is not going to work out mathematically. So with the BAA, I just want to thank you all. I know we're not supposed to talk about it during FY27, but thank you so much, because it will put a little bump in our ability to.
It's overtime, and also you have to do lodging sometimes.
Correct. Yep. So we are. That's a major area, in part because we want to expand our accountability dockets to places like Rutland, Windham, Washington. And so my ability to say yes to overtime is contingent on what we have in those budgets. And overtime was increased in terms of the expense line during the accountability docket in Chittenden, because we weren't going to say no during that time period, certainly. And the same will be true in Rutland. Rutland has a great advantage. Marble Valley is a mile from the courthouse. So.
But the defendant may be lodged in Newport.
Right.
And years ago, when corrections had more staff, we would be at our folks to be able to connect and ask if corrections could move the person. The person's got a hearing, can you get them down further down towards us, towards Rutland? But corrections doesn't have the staff to basically move people around based on our needs. So that's been a real problem.
Yeah. The third priority, in part because I would be remiss not to mention it, but I know the budget year that you're in would be for 4 victim advocates and 6 legal assistant secretary positions. Those are broken down by the costs that we've estimated per position. And those are our third priority for a reason, because we know that when you hire a new employee, person needs a place to work. They have salary and benefits. They have healthcare and retirement costs, which we do not control, and which are very, very problematic in terms of the healthcare costs. So we know that these are important things that we should be asking for, but we also know the year that you're in. So our order of priority is eliminating vacancy savings, which means keeping our current workforce, operating expenses relating to our most serious cases, and overtime for moving cases. And then the third priority would be increasing administrative staff and victim advocates, which are lower cost than attorneys, but still very helpful in moving cases at a lower cost to the system and the state, and have very low turnover. We have secretaries and admins in our department that have worked for 30 and 40 years. We have victim advocates that have worked for the same time period. They come to our department, they stay, and they are the backbone of our whole department, those 2 positions. Really 3 positions, but that's our priorities. An executive summary. We're happy to hop into more of the detail if you want, Mr. Chair.
I have a question about sheriff deputies, and I don't know if you heard the testimony from judiciary NHS, how the different deputies are charged, or they have two different contracts, somebody's paying 75 and somebody's paying 57. But your transport deputies are employees, so you don't have like an hourly
So there's
connection, you don't have a contract.
There's two worlds. Yeah, there's the private side of the sheriff's operations, which is what you're talking about, those contracts. Our folks are state employees. We do have per diem for non-state employees that help with transports. We pay about
$50.
$50 an hour for those. But the contracts, sheriffs are allowed to enter into contracts in the private or county capacity, and they have one with AHS at, I believe, $75 an hour, and they have one for court security with the courts, which is a unified contract at a lower number.
57.
Yeah.
And is that because there's different work, like if you're doing transport work versus court work?
So the court security, I know that the sheriff's executive committee is conversing with Greg Mosey from the judiciary about the rate. And by Act 30, which passed a couple of years ago, said that the sheriffs had to have one unified contract with the judiciary, not separate ones. There were problems with that. So there's one unified contract that the sheriffs do for court security primarily, and that is at $57. And Human Services does the 75 similarly. They do $75, and that's primarily for the sheriff's own folks. The sheriffs, we call them per diems, but they're actually sheriff's deputies, not state employees, and they primarily are working to support DMH, DCF, and just I'm thinking that's pretty much who they work for Human Services.
Are they doing more what I would consider like police work?
Yeah, well, no, they
Then
primarily, in terms of
security
Human Services, they would pretty much be working, like maybe supervising a kid who, before they can get a placement for the, maybe they're gonna move that youth down to a Brattleboro retreat, but somebody's gotta be with the kid during that period of time. For DMH, it might be moving somebody to the state psychiatric hospital, so.
The two
that's
buckets
how that
are,
goes.
one is a court ordered
Yeah, one is.
and a contract. So all of our employees, the SAS transport deputies, are directed by either court orders or minimus to go back to a facility. The contract work those aren't court orders, that's an agency working with the sheriffs on the other side of the house to say, hey, we need help in this thing. And so it is another area where the sheriffs are providing, it's where government is paying itself.
But there's nowhere else for them to go, they kind of have to go to the sheriffs for that work.
I don't think any of the other agents, law enforcement agencies want it or have the capacity, and the sheriffs have.
They are kind of our roving police force.
But I haven't, I'm gonna be meeting with the sheriff's board after we come back. The administrative costs, which we were referring to, we thought maybe it was like the governor's office or whatever. It isn't, it's these private contracts, it's wide loads, traffic details, things along the lines where they're actually using their vehicles, and quite possibly paying their deputies time and a half to do these details, if they want to secure these details. So when the other agency came in and said they want to get from 56, 57 up to 75, we need to delve into that.
Right, well, that's what I was wondering if there was.
But DMH contracts, security contracts, yeah. The administrative cost goes to the sheriff overhead, not the sheriff's office, not the sheriff's office.
Right.
Because they're not funded accordingly, obviously, to the county, so.
It's even following on what Senator Norris is saying, it's even a problem for us insofar as we pay $50 an hour for the sheriff per diem. So if the sheriff has two transport deputies, one of them's out of workers' comp or sick leave something, and we need a transport done, they get a court order, the sheriff will need to pull it per diem, one of their folks in there. It's difficult because the sheriff might be able to put that person on a private contract, Pike Industries or someone on the interstate, but they'd be paid, maybe $90 an hour for that person. So we're competing against private rates. So in some ways, we've talked about this a fair amount, but the sheriffs underwrite the state transport system because they are providing the car, they are providing uniforms, they're sending people to training and all of that stuff. There's a fair amount of underwriting that goes on by the sheriffs to support state transport back and forth. And this problem, we need to take a look at it at some point, in more robust fiscal times, whether we can get our per diem rate that we reimburse the sheriffs a little bit higher, because we're not competitive at all with any of the other rates.
And then what you have to realize is that when the wheels are moving on state transport, whether it's a per diem or whatever else, they're making no money. They're quite possibly losing money because the $50 they pay per diem goes to the per diem, doesn't go to any place within the office. The only thing you get on transports basically is miles.
Right.
That's it. So the wheels are moving on state transports. Yeah, they're not making money on those things.
And have you brought up before, like, the question of who should be paying for the transports? Like, should be out of the corrections budget or out of your
I
budget?
think it's a great question.
Okay, I thought we talked about that.
I'm not going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Wherever we have it, it's gonna be.
we are not driving, we are responding to a system that is asking for transports. I hypothetically set the job duties for the transport deputies and put out a policy to that effect, but the courts feel that that is a slight encroachment into their branch.
But they're driving the courts are driving
Correct.
our overtime costs.
Oh, yeah.
They
Right.
say, we want a defendant at the courthouse,
Yeah.
you know,
At 8 o'clock.
for an 8 o'clock, and then they're not seen until 2:30
Right.
or 3. And we're sitting around, and that, you know, it's not only our staff, we feel badly for the defendant that's been sitting in court all day long. And then, you know, the release is, now they've got to get the person back to Newport. We've got overtime at the front end and the back end.
So maybe if they were paying the transport costs, they would
Figure it
think about
out.
the schedule
Block
of the.
schedule. Sure, absolutely.
One
We
thing
can go into that later.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to note is, this is on page 3 of your report. It's a map. I know you're all interested in the state, but also your own county. Caseload per county, number of homicides, number of attorneys in each county. And it's current as of December 2025. So good visual for you all to have. And we're trying to do more visuals in our department. We're not just drowning in memos. I wanted to quickly run through the 4 detail pages, which Annie can quickly run through. Page 6, if you go.
This is the 155.
Correct. Correct. Yep. So page 6 of the report is the state's attorney's highlights, which Annie can run through.
Yeah, I
quickly.
mean, I think that the most important thing to know is, in terms of the state's attorney, the overall budget increase was 5.7%. I mentioned to you that you may see some changes on the interdepartmental. There's a $53,000 charge. Basically, that is one of the domestic violence sex assault investigators who came back to us. He was a retired state police officer, so he can't come back as anything but a temp, so we have that money listed there. Not a big change. We have some changes in terms of our, we've listed some money that we receive from the Governor Highway Safety, State Highway Safety Office in terms of our expenses. We traditionally just listed that as the salary benefit, but we took some of the operating and are showing some of the operating expenses here. So really the takeaway from this budget for the state's attorney's budget was 5.7% increase, with basically, again, their vacancy savings number is $330,000 for FY27. We had, so we're looking, of course, to see if we can get the vacancy saving eliminated. And Tim did, I think, a good job of explaining what some of the work pressures are.
So any questions on the state's attorneys? So if you go to the next page, it's just, we always provide a breakdown a bit more visually scroll up a little bit more on the pie chart. Of basically what is taking up the most resources, and you can see salary and wages, the fringe benefits you're aware of, and then the smaller pieces, operating being smaller, and some of the other services there. Moving to the SIU, which is our simplest budget, which actually we jump all the way to page 95, because there's a ton of data in between on the state's attorneys, which I ran through in the executive summary.
So as Tim mentioned, in essence, the SIU program money that we have is just a grant pass-through. We have one staff person who helps administer all the grants and all the assist the SIUs with all their questions, and that's just one permanent position. And the money is just a pass-through. The increase on that was just 3%. We consider it level funded for the year. And that their biggest challenge right now is to connect with law enforcement resources, trying to get dedicated hours to the SIU from law enforcement, local law enforcement, because they are struggling to fill their vacancies. So we've got some success going. St. Albans PD just came back in. They have been a longtime partner to the Newsy unit in Northwest. They had to back out because of staffing problems. They're back in. Some of the counties do pretty well with connecting. Lamoille County actually has 3 agencies that support the SIU in Lamoille County. They each give a little bit of hours, but their law enforcement people connect and work together on the cases. So our biggest challenge with the SIUs, it has been some turnover of their own staff, because they're all 501c3s, by the way. They're not connected to state government, except for this grant program. So it's level funded, and there's not a lot to report other than the fact that I think having our own staff person being available to the SIUs daily and working with them daily and helping to recruit and helping them with even with their physical infrastructure problems, sometimes with them, with the BGS and things. So it's been a good program. We think it's working well. We hope that having, we got Rutland in line. Rutland's having some problems. Orange County's having some problems, just structurally for their own units. And I think our staff person is the reason they're back online.
Okay, so Norris, then we gotta move along.
Yeah, quick question. The state's attorney's salary is set by statute through the pay act or whatever else. Deputy state's attorneys, are they now unionized?
They are unionized.
So you don't have control over that then? Okay.
Yes, and the state transport deputies, as you know, are also the 2 units in our department. Moving to the victim advocates budget, which again can be thought of in a way as on the state's attorney's program.
Yeah. So the VA budget was up 13.1%, but to a large extent, when I looked at those numbers, most of it had to do with salaries and health insurance and retirement costs going up. The $270,000 of vacancy savings that was built into our budget last year, we haven't met. This year, that vacancy saving number goes down to 147, which is great, but we'd like to see that eliminated too, because that is a program that has essentially no turnover.
Yeah, and high caseloads.
And high caseload, 600 cases per victim advocate.
The last budget that we have is the sheriff's, and that's starting on page 124.
The sheriffs saw a 9.3% increase in their budget allocation. They have a vacancy savings number to meet for 26 of 139. I mentioned that right now we're holding 3 positions that are funded in the 26 budget. We're holding them vacant because if we don't hold them vacant, we will end this fiscal year in a significant deficit based upon expenses in the sheriff's programs, overtime, mileage, per diem, all of that. We were just really, it's not in good, the sheriff's budget, even with a 9.3% increase, is not in good shape. So we are, and that's largely being driven by those 3 things. So we're happy for the increase. We're grateful to see the increase, but we really need to have a conversation, and it may be some conversation about how is the program being, how are they being funded? What needs to get done, and it's primarily in terms of the transport program, because the sheriff's salary is set by statute. We get the salary and the benefits and all of that. Similarly, it's the cost of running the transport program that's dragging the sheriff's budget into a deficit.
I did want to mention one thing about the sheriff's salaries, just because I think it's a point of public record. The sheriff of Windsor County his certification was removed by the Criminal Justice Council in temporary fashion, but pursuant to a law that our department advocated for, Act 30, his salary has been reduced by 30% by working with the Department of Human Resources.
Yeah.
And that is really it for us, our 4 budgets and our highlights. And again, there's a ton of data in here that's available to talk about performance in the different areas. And I think we really appreciated the memo that you all sent out about how we should talk about what we do.
Yeah, no, you're a rare example of somebody following it, actually, I think. We gotta go, but the last question is, in the past, you've talked about coordination or case management with the Attorney General's office, and what cases they take on or don't take on, and how that can relieve pressure or not. Is that?
I believe in Addison, they've been doing quite a bit in Addison over the last year, and Addison is an area where we have a lot of concerns. It's a point of public record that we had to pay a law firm, Paul Franklin Collins, to do an independent investigation into the Addison office, much in the same way we did with John Lavoie. And pursuant to the report we received, we referred that matter to the Professional Responsibility Board. So Addison is an area where I believe the state police is working directly with the Attorney General's office. We still have very high caseloads. and probably a larger conversation for a different day, but state's attorneys, I'm sure, would like to see, more equitable caseloads across the two entities, for sure.
But as far as the murder cases, the homicide cases.
So 103 of the 111 as of December 10th were being staffed by our department, so about 93%. Which is a little, last year, we were maybe closer to 96% of the pending cases. So it looks like they picked up a couple of homicides, more than at the same point last year, but I'll let them speak about their data. The data we use is judicial filing data. It's the best available data. And the way we pull that data, sort of buried in your report, is based on the prosecutor of record. So if the prosecutor of record in a large Excel sheet is Annie Noonan, there might be another prosecutor, a second chair. That's not captured in the report. So it's possible there's some of that going on, but it's hard to suss through.
Okay. All right, well, thanks for your work.
Thank you, Senators.
Thank you very much. I'll bring over that big map for Amy.
Yeah. Put it up on the wall.
Yeah.
You're the best.
Okay, we'll continue with our FY27 budget request. We have Public Utilities Commission. I'll let you introduce yourselves for the record and give us a presentation.
Great, thank you. I'm Ed McNamara, I'm Chair for the Public Utility Commission.
Ann Bishop, I'm the Operations Director for the Public Utility Commission.
Karen Hutchinson, I'm the Business Manager.
Great, thanks. Sorry, I should have started. Sorry about that. All right, do I have permission?
We also have your presentation on our website.
Yep. All right. So just a quick overview of who we are. Commission's been around for a long time regulating public utility commissions. At this point, it's primarily, most of our work involves electric and gas utilities. There's some components for both those industries that are regulated on the federal side, we regulate on the state side. Excuse me. We also regulate private water companies, telecommunication and cable television as well. Although there's much less regulation on those sides, simply because the federal government has occupied most of the space. To give some sense of scale, there's 27 positions. 3 of those are currently vacant. And also this will be relevant later on when we do the ups and downs. This is actually down from 3 positions even a year ago. In 2023, I believe, the Clean Heat Standard passed that provided 2 full-time and 1 limited service position. After the legislative session ended last year without any movement on the Clean Heat Standard, we still had those 3 positions. We essentially gave up those positions because if Clean Heat Standard does move forward, it needs new appropriation, new positions. We didn't want to just carry those indefinitely when it wasn't clear what was going to happen. So FY27 budget request or proposed budget is basically 5.3 million, which is an increase of 2.8% above FY26.
That's impressively low compared to what we've seen on it. But I guess that's partly because you did these 3 positions.
Exactly. That's a large component of it. The projected revenues, though, are 4.3 million. which we do have a reserve of roughly 3.5 million that can be used when there is a deficit between the projected budget and the revenues. Just want to spend a minute on revenues. We're funded primarily from the gross receipts tax, which is a tax paid by the regulated utilities. Electric makes up, I think, about 70% of that. That represents 96% of our funding. Application fees, which are paid by merchant generators, those who are not regulated utilities, that makes up about 4% of our budget. And also this a little bit silly chart here, we're 100% special funded. We have received general funds only once in 2023 because of clean heat standard. I think that was the only time in recent memory that we received.
Does this dealing with the delta of your budget versus your revenues, using the reserve, does that drain your reserves?
Yes, it does. Yep. Reserves have been around these 20 years. And depending on the year, some money could be put into the reserve, some can be taken out. And there's certain limits on how much we can put into every year versus simply returning.
And finance, you work with finance and management on that, I assume.
Yes.
They'll steal it from you if they think you have too much.
They've not done so yet. So they also understand sort of the situation we're in, where because we're special funded, we actually, and the Department of Public Service is funded primarily the same way. They're the ones who actually take in the money from the utilities and from merchant generators. We don't receive that until end of the year, end of the fiscal year. So we're essentially self-funding through the year with our reserves as much as we can. So
I think you had a report that came out about unregulated fuels and adding a surcharge on that. Would that at all help you and your revenue shortfall?
No. So that report, that was a legislative request to look at potential ways to help low-income Vermonters, specifically on the electric side. What we mentioned in that report is what we've been saying for the last 6+ years, which is
that's all.
At least, which is essentially heating is one of the most significant portions of energy burden for folks. And that one way to address that is to increase the fuel tax that is used to fund weatherization. That would not impact our budget in any way. We are not involved in unregulated fuels such as oil and propane. We regulate natural gas, but not others.
Right. I've been looking at that one for a long time too.
Thank you. So just to make sure that I'm understanding, so you'd be looking at using about $1 million in your reserve.
That's correct.
Of the 3.5.
That's correct.
Okay. And you said that there's also limits as to how much you can put back in to the reserve in any given year. Is that, so how much, presumably this would not be a year where we're refunding it because you're using some of it, but what do those limits look like?
This is quite honestly, I did not memorize that because we're not seeing, the main issue is we're not seeing putting money into the reserves for foreseeable future. The things like health insurance, and this is health insurance for us, retirement costs. So we also pay ADS and BGS as well for their services. They also have the exact same budget pressures as well. What we're seeing is our revenues are increasing 2 to 3%, and our budget is increasing faster than that. Again, if it wasn't for the clean heat standard positions, essentially putting those off to the side, the budget would be probably over 3%. Am I getting that correct?
Yes. Essentially, we've been looking at some of this data, and it's been if you look over the last 10 years, on average, our costs, taking clean heat aside, our costs have been exceeding our revenue growth by at least a couple of percentage points. And so we have we are now forecasting that we're taking approximately almost $1 million from our reserve this year, and we're expecting those numbers are gonna just get larger.
And I will also say that, again, I mentioned earlier, electric is the most significant contributor for gross receipts tax. There has been some thought that electrification, new electric vehicles and heat pumps would actually add to gross receipts tax and would help catch up with that delta. That's not showing up. One of the purely theories that I have is that if you're net metering, you're more likely to be able to, it makes more economic sense to do an EV or a heat pump. And those customers are therefore, we're not seeing the same growth in gross receipts for utilities, and therefore the funds aren't showing up. So that's the main issue we're seeing. The other
The
aspect.
gross receipts tax is on sales of the utility, so any net meter generation doesn't pay the gross receipts.
That's correct. Yep. And if, again, this is a theory, and we haven't dug into it yet. If a lot of the electric vehicles are being used by customers who have net metering systems, it means that additional kilowatt hours, not as much is showing up as we would have expected, absent the net metering system.
I'd say there's definitely part of, that's definitely part of it.
It's a part, and I have no idea what percentage of that is. The other aspect that's important, especially for electric and natural gas, it entirely depends on the weather at this point. Partly it's sunny days, how much net metering, but also how cold. Like I fully expect that January and the first part of February, we'd see increased, we definitely would have seen increased natural gas usage and increased electric usage. Terrible for Vermont consumers, good for gross receipts tax.
Right.
So. Okay. All right, just to give overall context, some more context to our workload. So there's about 2,200 new cases filed with the commission just in 2025. Large portion of that is net metering. More than 100 hearings and workshops. We do public hearings at night. Most of those we try to do over Teams, try to do it electronically so that way more people can participate, particularly if it's, for example, next week we have Green Mountain Power in for a rate increase, and that's a statewide utility, so we'll have a public hearing at 7 o'clock next Thursday if anyone wants to join. Time frame for resolving cases, we try to keep certain criteria in terms of resolve the cases as expeditiously as possible. That's what this is about here. I'm gonna try to fly through. I recognize you're all behind already. All right, major cases, so 2025, part of what I want to pause on this slide, the first 4 bullets are all related to legislative. So we're seeing obviously a budget pressure and need to figure that out. I am telling people we don't really have bandwidth to do brand new significant reports. Like we just don't have the ability to do that. So if you're hearing that in Senate chamber, this is a great idea that the PUC should do this 3-year report. This has nothing to do with any work that we do. Just assume that I said we shouldn't be doing that. So full advocacy there. Also, 2025, we did a fair amount of small, I call small electric rate cases. That's our small municipal electric utilities, cooperative utilities, looking at GMP's integrated resource plan and a couple of 20 megawatt solar projects. That was all in 2025. I mentioned Green Mountain Power. They have a proposed 7.5% increase that they filed recently. So that is going to be an investigation contested case. And also they are looking to renew their 4-year multi-year regulation plan. We're also looking into what happened with Village of Hyde Park Electric Department as well. Looking how to improve the services for energy efficiency utilities and also the electric utilities under Tier 3, essentially the electrification tier under the renewable energy standard. Also, what we're working on right now is, it's called demand, I always get this one, DRP, Demand Resources Plan. Demand resources plan for efficiency Vermont, City of Burlington Electric, and Vermont Gas for the energy efficiency. And then obviously got a lot of other things here, a lot of wireless telecommunication towers. Those always ramp up every year at the sunset on that regulation or that statute gets close.
That's this, is it calendar year, 26?
It is June 30th, we would no longer be regulating siting for telecommunications tower unless legislature acts. So a lot of the telecom providers are proposing a lot of things. So.
Yeah, they're all.
Thank you. This is kind of going backwards a step, but in relation to how the gross receipts tax is calculated, is it on the volume of consumption, or is it like an additional tax on the price, which is to say that you all are not necessarily like motivated to approve rate increases, because your gross receipts tax isn't in addition to that or on top of that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and so gross receipts, so it really is the total revenue that the utility receives, and then it's a portion of the total revenue. So it's actually interesting, some states have changed their PUC, how they're funded, because if you look at it from a strictly economically rational perspective, we should be encouraging rate increases because it increases the revenues for the utility and would therefore increase. That obviously is counter to why we're appointed, why we do our job. So, but some states, at least one state that I'm aware of, has changed so that they now just say, here's our budget, get approved by their state's legislature, and then the rate is set to meet the budget. So that way it takes any consideration, it takes a lot of the, that sort of up and down, depending on weather, it takes a lot of that out.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
Nobody does it on kilowatt hours.
I don't know. No, I have
You
not
still
heard
have
of that,
the-
but I haven't looked at that either. So,
Yeah, you would still have the weather dependency.
Right.
yep.
Okay.
All right. So comparing FY26 to FY27, FY26 was 5.144, and we're increasing to 5.3. So we did our best to keep below 3%. FY27 includes 217,000 vacancy turnover savings. And a large portion of that change again is because of the 3 vacant clean heat standard positions that are no longer in there. I do want to sort of flag at the very bottom here, these bullets, FY26 to FY27. So retirement increased by 4.1%, healthcare 10%, other fringe benefits almost 9.5%. And then internal service funds, essentially what we're paying to ADS, BGS, that increased by 5.6%. So that's where our primary budget sort of pressures are coming from. Okay. I've already mentioned revenues, essentially gross receipts tax. Apparently there's a discrepancy. 97% of our budget is gross receipts tax. I think somewhere else I had 6%. And then the application fees, 2.3%. Billbacks is essentially when we have an open case, we sometimes bill back costs. So I've talked about the budget challenges already, except for the fact that 87% of our budget is salaries and benefits. So it's not like we have any capital costs or anything else. We're not A&R, we don't own a lot of property. It's just primarily salaries and benefits. Do want to mention application fees. It's a really small portion of our revenue, but it represents about a quarter of our work. And so that's something that we need to resolve at some point. Different ways of resolving that. One is potentially increasing application fees. It's difficult in this current environment to propose increases in application fees. The other possibility that has not been, that we're currently looking at in a little bit more detail is Vermont is one of only 4 states in the country where the PUC is responsible for siting small-scale generation. Small scale being anything 10 megawatts or below. So vast majority of our merchant generation is under 5 megawatts. That's because of the setup of RES. Most other states in the country, those projects would actually be reviewed at the local level. So that's one other possibility as well, is instead of increasing application fees, take away that chunk of work.
And whoever we give it to will want their budget to go up.
No, because this would actually be up to the local towns to actually set their application fees for, I mean, this would be City of Montpelier or somebody. The local municipalities already do zoning, they already have
What if it's in
application fees.
Victory?
I'm sorry?
What if it's in Victory, the town?
That doesn't
There are
So
some
it can
towns.
create special exemptions.
I just figured it would kind of go through like the LRD or, it would be like an Act 250 permit. And they would want more money to handle those cases or the appeals and stuff.
There's definitely a fair number of projects over 10 acres that would be through LURB, and that is, they already have an application fee structure, and I have not talked to LURB, so this is, to be clear, this is not a proposal, it's just throwing out ideas.
No, it's,
And I also haven't talked to Vermont League of Cities and Towns, who might also hate the idea.
Well, one question about that, do you have a sense, if that shift were to happen, do you have a sense of how much cost demand would be avoided for your budgeting purposes?
So about 25% of our work involves citing merchant generation, and so probably 20 to 25%.
Okay.
up to 5 million.
Of the 5. Well, yeah.
Okay.
It would be a material savings.
So I would love to chat more about this, and I especially would love to dig into some of the details about where that is, like, is it the Montpeliers or is it the Victories of Vermont that are having to navigate, that where those projects end up being cited and the support that they could.
Sounds like a special hearing instead of natural resources.
Sounds like some good future work.
And to be clear, this is, again, I'm throwing out, I'm sort of flagging issues and potential, because the budget gap, $1 million gap in a 5.3 million budget is significant, and it is not going to be one magic, like, silver bullet that solves the problem. And so in my mind, we need to put everything on the table and then sort that out, as opposed to just, because I've heard from other people of just, well, just increase application fees, increase gross receipts tax. And I don't think that is, looking at only one side of the equation doesn't make sense in my mind. You need to look at both.
I would just say to you, they're never gonna do it in Victory anyways, they don't have the power lines to carry the power. So it's going to be in a larger town.
I think that's
There we could
possible.
come up with other.
Right, there's lots of other examples, and one
These
possibility is, with these kind of larger
The
projects.
problem is everybody in the larger towns wants to shove it to the smaller towns, where there aren't the power lines.
There's lots to
Or
be
the zoning.
dug into there. So open to the conversations.
You could attend her here.
That's right.
I've been at hearings, I've cited a megawatt project.
And I would, I'd suggest this is, we're collecting more information, because also, quite honestly, on the other side, gross receipts tax is difficult to predict. I mentioned before about what's happening with electrification and other things. Obviously, we need to look at that and try to better predict that. We've been working with some folks at the Department of Public Service on that as well. So, all right, just trying to think if there's things, there's fund balance. Okay, fund balance, we've talked about the reserve a little bit. So, ups and downs, this really is, when you look at this, again, is 3 positions.
Is this 26 and 27? The columns don't have
Oh, sorry, it's 26 and 27.
It's the change.
It's a change.
It's a change
From
from-
26 to 27, yes.
Special fund, so which is probably all, the two columns are probably all the same.
They're all
They are.
exactly the same. So-
Because there's
Yeah.
no GF.
Right, yes, exactly. So again, this is largely related to the fact that there's 3 positions that are no longer housed or PUC. And then shows sort of some of the budget pressures from some of the other aspects that I've already talked about. Up to you folks, what else you want to hear. I'm just looking at your.
No, unless there's some other thing within these other data specifics, if you have anything that stands out. It seems it's pretty straightforward.
There's nothing else that we want to proactively present. We submitted these just this morning, so apologies on that, the slides this morning. So feel free, if you have any questions, please just reach out. Let us know if we can answer anything.
Did your SL, I don't know if you know this question, but your service level agreement, did it go down even though your ADS allocation went up? Does that make sense?
There is actually, included in our service level agreement is a cost related to EPUC, which is our online filing system. And we have made a change to reduce the costs associated with that system. We used to use a program in the background called OnBase, a software program. The annual licensing fee for that, we paid ADS through our SLA.
Okay.
So we don't have to pay that in FY '27, and so it looks like our SLA costs went down, but they actually went down by less than the amount of the license fee that we're saving. In other words, everything else went up, but
Right, because your allocated charge went up $18,000. I thought I saw somewhere else. Because they're trying to change the way they're billing agencies and departments.
yes.
So there's a little more structure. So, because some people are getting hit with these SLA fees at the end of the year that they weren't budgeting for.
It's also the year that the ADS fee carried over that fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what they tried to change it.
Yeah.
You have to pay some of it up front. But you don't have, some people have hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you don't have that much of an IT budget. Thankfully.
We end up paying about $180,000 in cost to ADS.
And that's in part because of EPUC. It's online filing, yes, it's online filing, but it's also a way for anyone in the public to access any of the files involved in the cases. It's increased transparency, so there's a fair amount of cost, but in our mind, a lot of benefits there as well.
Definitely. Okay.
All right.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We need more money.
Yeah, everybody, so is the military department?
Kim should be in the hall.
Yes, they're out there. They just peeked it, so.
Okay, well, we can go on mute or So we're gonna go, so yeah, we're back to FY 27 budget, presentations. We have the military, what do we say, military?
Military
Department?
department, yes.
One said the military agency, but I didn't. So yes.
No, we don't get that.
Military department is here. So I'll let you introduce yourself for the record, anybody you have with you, and give us your presentation.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Kim Fidelli. I'm the financial director for the military department. I have with me Felicia Bosley Gutierrez, who works in our finance office as well, and Alana Tate, who is our legal services specialist. So we're here to assist. I'm just going to hop on.
Are you a brigadier general?
I am not, no.
Is that what
Unfortunately,
BG stands for?
that is what BG stands for. Our adjutant general and our deputy adjutant general both out of town this week, so they send their regrets they couldn't be here today, but they will be happy to come provide you an update on the guards when they return.
Right.
If needed. Okay, just trying to share my screen just a moment.
It's happening.
You gotta update the slide for the new adjutant
The new
general.
adjutant general, yeah, absolutely. Okay.
All right, so
There we go. I unfortunately won't have any opening comments from the adjutant general, but I'll get into just an overview of our department, talk about some of the program performance that has been accomplished over the last year, and then we'll go dive into the budget and talk about some of the ongoing projects and accomplishments that we've been working on. So the military department, essentially the mission is to support the National Guard. So there are 5 appropriations that we operate to do so. We have our administration appropriation, our Air Guard services, Army services, building maintenance, and Veterans Affairs. So I'll talk a little bit more about each of those. And going in the wrong direction, apologies. So under the administration appropriation, we house a couple of our bigger programs like the Vermont National Guard Tuition Benefit Program, which has been very successful, operating through in conjunction with VSAC to help bring some great educated folks into the Guard. It's been a very successful program over the last several years. We also have our Joint Enlistment Enhancement Program, which is a fairly new incentive program where we provide incentive payments to any soldiers, airmen, or retirees that help us bring somebody into the National Guard. So they can refer somebody to recruiting, and if that person enlists in the Guard, then they'll receive an incentive payment. I'll talk about more about the success of that program a little later on. Also within administration, we have our internal service funds. We also have 7 employees, including all of our executive staff, which is paid through the administration appropriation, all of general fund.
So you have 7, not 6.
6.5 FTE, yes, that is accurate. And this the administration appropriation also supports any state active duty response during states of emergency. The last event that we had was the July 2024 flooding event, when the Guard was activated to perform some staging, so water rescue. Again, in the July 2023 flooding event, same similar situation happened there. And of course, COVID response. Sorry, I keep going.
They did the Swiss water, do you have a Swiss water rescue team in the Guard?
I believe so. Or I'm not really sure which unit responded to that, but I know that they were working with the Swiss Water Rescue team.
Because we have the USAR
Mhm.
There's probably some overlap to people that serve in the Guard but are also,
Yeah.
like on the fire department, participate in the use of teams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have as much
That's
knowledge
fine.
as the generals would have. So we also have our air services program. Now we're getting into a lot of programs that bring in a lot of federal dollars to the state. So all of these programs here support the Air National Guard base. We have some construction program, the sustainment, restoration, maintenance program that and the facilities operations and maintenance programs. Those support all of those facilities at the Air National Guard base in South Burlington. An environmental program, security forces, the fire department, Starbase, and some major military construction projects that are going on
Starbase
there.
an acronym, or what is it?
Starbase is a youth STEM program, so they have a space up at the Air Guard, and they actually bring in fifth graders from all over the state, and they come and they do hands-on STEM-related activities.
Launch rockets.
They launch rockets.
Yeah.
It's actually a really, really cool program, but it's all funded through.
Both my daughters get
through-
started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
It's all
that's what
funded
those
through
rockets
DOT.
Shooting George Williston.
All of these programs here you see, except for the facilities, operations and maintenance and environmental programs, they're all 100% federally funded through the National Guard Bureau. The facilities and environmental programs have a 25% state share. For our Army Services program, many of the same programs, just on the Army side, with a couple of extra, a couple of additional programs. Similarly, the only program on this, in this appropriation that requires a state match is the Facilities Operations and Maintenance Program. So that's really supporting, the state match for that is really supporting the majority of the outlying armories across the state. A lot of our Army facilities are 100% federally supported. Some have a state match of 50%, some have a state match of 25%. So.
I saw this on this slide and the last one, environmental programs, so what does that entail?
That is a great question. At least on the Army side, I have a little bit more knowledge of, but there are a lot, we own the National Guard itself owns a lot of land, especially at the Ethan Allen firing range. There's acres upon acres of land up there. So there's a lot of wetland that is maintained. They do a lot of maintaining of the actual ranges themselves. So there's sometimes they actually they'll burn the ranges to try to maintain the vegetation. And then a lot of wildlife that habitat that is to be maintained up there as well. So there's a lot of like federal requirements that go into maintaining the land and environmental related tasks that go along with that. I could provide you some more information.
Thank you.
Senator Lyons?
So, the word anti-terrorism caught my,
Yes.
eye, and so what is that program? How do you coordinate those activities?
So we have a contracted position that acts as our anti-terrorism coordinator. So he works in conjunction with our security forces and our executive office to essentially just assess situations. They work a lot when we are inviting other delegations to visit Vermont. He helps to coordinate, make sure safety requirements are met, and assessing any threats or any situation that might come up. Our building maintenance appropriation is very simple. It provides the state match for the Army facilities program. There's just under 2 million, I think, in this appropriation of state match, but it's essentially supporting all of those state-owned facilities that have a state match and some other activities that might not be supported through our cooperative agreements with the National Guard Bureau. Lastly, we have our Veterans Affairs appropriation. So, you might be aware of the Veterans Affairs office that sits just across the street from the State House. So there's a team of individuals down there that helps to support about 36,000 veterans that still live in Vermont. The veteran service officers that work over there, they help to assist veterans with obtaining federal benefits from the government, and help to advocate for them through the process of obtaining those benefits. They, the Office of Veterans Affairs also administers the Vermont Veterans Fund grants. So that's grants that are awarded to nonprofit organizations that support veterans every year. We actually receive funds through donations, mostly during tax season. You can, folks can choose to donate to them, to donate to this fund when they're doing their state refunds. So we award somewhere between $70,000 and $90,000 worth of grants every year through that fund. And they also provide emergency financial assistance to veterans in need. At a certain point, any veteran can obtain a $500 assistance for emergency needs.
Are they working in that building, or since the flood, did they
Yes.
have to leave, they moved back?
They had to leave for a little bit, mostly the basement that flooded, which they don't work in, but they've been back in for a while. Lastly, the Veterans Affairs team also operates the Vermont Veterans Memorial Cemetery down in Randolph, Northfield. Okay, talk a little bit about some of our programs that we've been running. So first is the Vermont National Guard Tuition Benefit Program. So that provides tuition assistance for Guard members that are working towards either a first or even a second bachelor's degree, or a master's degree, or certificate programs. So the recipients of this funding, they will complete 2 years of service for every one full academic year that they receive funding for. So anyone receiving, for instance, a bachelor's degree would then turn around and provide 8 years of service in the National Guard in return. It's been a very successful program with over 100 recipients the last 3 fiscal years.
Thank you.
So our budget request this year for the program is just over 1.2 million, which is level to the current state fiscal year.
And is it whatever tuition is, or is it just a set amount regardless of what the tuition is?
It's whatever the tuition is for the school that they're attending. I believe they.
Could it be any school, or is there no requirements on where the school is?
There are requirements. It's Vermont schools mainly. If they're looking to pursue a program that is not offered in Vermont, they can utilize an out-of-state school, but I believe they'll provide the UVM tuition rate in that case.
Okay.
Next, I spoke about this a little bit, is our Joint Enlistment Enhancement Program. So this is the program where we're providing an incentive payment to soldiers, airmen, retirees who are providing a potential recruit to the National Guard. So this program has really taken off in the last couple of years. Last year alone, we brought in 108 new recruits into the Guard through this program. That was actually responsible for 40% of all of the Army National Guard enlistments during that last federal fiscal year, which is really outstanding. The numbers you'll see will be a little skewed because the Army's reporting on a federal fiscal year, we're reporting on a state fiscal year, just for your awareness. And then for the Air Guard, it was responsible for about 19% of the total enlistments.
Is the Army Guard about twice as big as the Air Guard, personnel-wise? You know?
I think it is around there. Yeah, it is. There's certainly a lot more personnel in the Army than there. So our budget for this fiscal year is unfortunately, it's only about $70,000. We have been able to utilize carry forward funds the last couple of years. It really took off a lot, faster than we had anticipated. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to grow our general fund budget to support the need that it's trending towards. So we're certainly working hard to find any other areas of opportunity where we can move money into that program. And I do anticipate similar numbers in the current state fiscal year, just the way that things are trending so far. But this program has been a very high priority for the Adjutant General and the National Guard as a whole, as it's really putting a lot of the onus on the current members to try to help to recruit, and it also helps I think it also helps with retention, because it gives them some incentive to stay in the Guard, bring more people into the Guard.
And is it, they have to be retired, or they have to be, can they just be a veteran to get the $1,000?
I'm not positive on that. I'd have to look at our policy. Okay, our next program, I'll talk a little bit about our veteran service officers. So those are the folks that work in the Office of Veterans Affairs to help bring federal benefits to veterans. So we have 6 veteran service officer positions, which are budgeted at just under $700,000 of general fund. But in turn, this shows how many federal dollars of benefits are actually brought into the state for those veterans that they're serving. So that the return really is immense, because that's less of a strain on the state benefit programs that they might help. And it's been a huge benefit to the soldiers who are, and for the veterans that are finally getting health benefits that are needed, and they really provide an exceptional service. So this is a little bit more on Starbase. So this, as I mentioned, is a youth program that operates at the Air National Guard. This shows how many of Vermont students have attended those programs. So they have several different programs, a 5-day program, anywhere from 1 to 4-day programs, and after-school programs. So they're serving anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 students each year, which is roughly 25% of the 5th graders in Vermont that get to come participate in this program, which is 100% federally funded through the National Guard Bureau. And there's a link to the website as well for some more information, and get to see the kind of cool stuff that they get to do. I'm very jealous. I wish I could participate in this program myself. One focus that is always something that we're always looking at is energy management. At least this is specifically for the Army National Guard. So we have an energy manager within our team that focuses on construction projects that we can help to increase efficiencies and energy efficiencies across our facilities. As you can probably guess, we have a lot of very old facilities. Some of our armories are upwards of 100 years old, so they're not the most energy efficient. But there have been a lot of construction projects to try to mitigate that, especially with some of the new buildings that are being put in. They are built. We're focusing on energy efficiency. We converted about 20 facilities up at the Ethan Allen firing range from propane to natural gas last year. We've been working on some weatherization projects, and at a couple of the armories, they are converting some old boilers from fossil fuel to electric. So at least we're aiming towards a cleaner energy
And the solar array at the airport next to the air guard hangars is owned by the guard, right?
It's owned by the guard, yes. Yeah, it is.
Yes, there was.
So, and it might seem that you have a microgrid at Camp Johnson?
So we are in the design process for microgrid. So that is one of
Oh, yes.
our major military construction projects that we've been working on. I think it went into design last year, so they're trying to put in a solar field there as well. Hopefully, it looks like they're estimating construction not till FY '29, but those certainly take a long time to get rolling. So we're hoping that that will provide not only some cleaner energy, but more resilience, energy resiliency. So if the power grid goes down for whatever reason, then Camp Johnson could still theoretically operate with our own stored energy. Okay, so I will get into the budget overview, and I'm not sure if we're still tight on time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll keep it short and sweet if that's okay. These items are basically our new funding requests. Other than these items highlighted here, we've maintained as much as we could, just a 3% increase across the board. But these items are above and beyond that. So
Are these above and beyond the governor's recommend?
these are in the governor's recommended budget.
But
Yes.
it's above the 3%?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So first we have a request for 6 new positions within our maintenance team. So these positions are essentially working in all of our buildings, keeping them running, operating, working with our contractors who need to come in and perform maintenance to the buildings. And so those 6 new positions will require a maximum 25% state share. So the 75% will be funded through the National Guard Bureau.
We have approval from the feds to add these.
Yes,
positions.
sir. Yep.
Okay.
Second, we have a request for a $10,000 annual grant to the USS Vermont Support Group. So that's an organization supporting the military members that serve on that ship and their families.
So-
That's, yes, yep. That has been accepted as a one-time budget, I believe, the last 2 or 3 fiscal years, but we've been, it's now been put into the governor's recommended for a base. As a base.
Okay.
Yep. Lastly, I have a request for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So the Vermont Veterans Memorial Cemetery is currently almost entirely funded through a special cemetery fund. There is a lot of payroll personnel costs that go into this and maintenance costs to maintain that cemetery. Those funds come in mostly from the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs, for internments that take place at the cemetery. The cemetery has expanded pretty significantly in the last 5 or 10 years. And the cost that it takes to run that cemetery has increased accordingly. Our personnel has grown in order to perform that maintenance. And unfortunately, we are spending more than we're bringing in at this point in that special fund. So our request here is to shift at least the personnel cost from the special fund to the general fund so that we can utilize that special fund to really put back towards the grounds and the facilities at the cemetery.
So is that the 167, is that the one at the 6 seasonal position?
Yes, that is. And then we can allocate those special funds toward actual perpetual care of the cemetery. There's 3 facilities down there. There's a chapel, maintenance building, and a welcome center that all will start to require a lot of care pretty soon. So that's our main goal with this request.
Okay.
Would you like me to go through any of the ups and downs on the other tabs?
I guess we can just look at the bullet points here pretty quick.
Yeah.
That seems
Sure.
pretty straightforward.
Sure. Not a whole lot of change on any of these other slides. Some change in personnel costs. The Operating costs have kind of shifted up and down between administration and Veterans Affairs. So any increase you're seeing on this page is really shifting some of the internal service funds from Vet Affairs over to admin. Just the way that they build it differently this year, it simplifies it to put it all in one. But again, I'll highlight there are no proposed changes to the tuition benefit program for this year, so you won't see that as a line item on this page. Mhm. In the Air National Guard, there's really a very like $28,000 change overall out of 800,000. That's really just in standard personnel costs and very minimal change to operating costs.
And is
At least on the general
everybody
side.
in the military department funded partial, get their, with the federal money, the 75,
The
25?
majority of personnel are, the folks under Veterans Affairs and under administration those are the only two appropriations that are 100% general fund. But I'd say 85% of our personnel have some sort of federal share.
What is the split, 80-20? Or-
It depends. Some are 100% federally funded, some are 75-25.
Okay.
Fairly standard. Under Army services, this is just the federal share for this program. The state match lives under building maintenance. But you will see here the increase, 400,000 for the federal share of those 6 new positions that we talked about earlier. Another 600,000 of increases for payroll, for most of the federally 100% federally funded positions. That includes a couple of new positions to support the Ethan Allen firing range. Operating costs really fluctuate quite a bit based on some of the programs that we have. A lot of it just depends on what federal funding is available in that fiscal year, so it could go up and down from year to year, just based on what NGB has authorized. But it doesn't necessarily affect our operations.
What is the 62,500 on your next slide that you need for energy rebates?
Oh, this one, yes. So the 62,005 is kind of a standard in our budget each year. So we sometimes it's for 2 different reasons. So we accept energy rebates for some of the those energy related projects that we do. Efficiency Vermont will send us funds to just an incentive. It's really just budget authority so that we can accept funds.
So you can pay if they get the rebate?
Yeah, exactly. And then we have also received some grant funds for maintaining the memorial that we have at Camp Johnson from, so that's just budget authority to be able to receive those funds.
Okay.
Also here, the major increase would be for those 6 positions, the 25% state match that we talked about. Yep, and Veterans Affairs, again, the only major changes are those 2 that we talked about, the grant to the USS Vermont, and then the shift from special fund to general fund for our personnel. And then one item I will highlight too is a budget adjustment for the FY26 general fund budget. It's actually to return some tuition benefit funds that were not used in FY25. So that the PSAC had ended a balance, or had ended the fiscal year with a balance of 286,000. So we would like to return that to the general fund. We do our best to, maintain as little carry forward as possible. Really, the majority of our carry forward funds for this year are going towards Pay Act, and then some minimal additional expenses that we will utilize for anything that's not supported by the National Guard Bureau.
Okay, I think that's
But I think that covers the budget.
yeah, it's a good place to end. I looked through, there's some other interesting slides here that senators can look through in your budget details. Did you tear down the armory that was in Winooski?
We did,
And are
yes.
you still, did you give up the site to, or is the site gonna be used for something?
We are in the process, we have authorization to actually sell the site to the city of Winooski. So they're working through some environmental, review to, purchase that site. And they, are intending to build some housing on it.
Good.
Just because I talked about this earlier, it's just an image of where they're burning
Right, I saw that.
the ranges to maintain the vegetation. It's a pretty cool process.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay. Well, we're gonna take a quick.
I got a quick question.
break.
St. Albans facility, is that still up and running?
Which one?
The St. Albans?
It is, we do still own
Armory.
it. I think did they move out?
Not formally, but soon.
Okay, so do you need?
And Eastburg was sold, right?
Which
The
one?
Eastburg facility was sold. Okay.
Yes, that's been gone since before.
Thank you.
You text me if you,
Thank you, Kim.
Yes, thank you so much.
you text me if you don't have a phone.
Okay, I think we'll have the form.
I gotta go.
So we're gonna take a quick break.